Neil Sean here, and thanks as ever for joining me again on What Happened on This Day. To kick off, really, I wanted to mention someone whose birthday it is today, who we sadly lost way back in 1996. I don't think really that there is anybody on this planet over a certain age that hasn't witnessed the magical talent of this particular segment of a film. We're talking, of course, about the brilliant 1952 epic Singing in the Rain. I was lucky enough to meet the birthday boy himself, Gene Kelly's co-star, Debbie Reynolds, and she told me lots of inside secrets about making that movie, and the fact that he basically trained her to be a dancer. Not a bad teacher really, is it, when you think about it, but it has become an iconic classic. Everybody loves to see that movie at any point during the year. And I think what's more important is, when you study it, this particular scene that everybody knows, you know, the one with him dancing in the rain and all that, the studio thought at first it could be too expensive. So they were trying to sort of talk him out of it, maybe just doing a smaller segment, that sort of stuff. How wrong they were, because when you think about it now, it is that particular scene that everybody remembers in the movie. Debbie Reynolds told me that Gene Kelly was a hard taskmaster. More importantly, she said he worked you to the bone, but she was so thrilled years later that he did, because it gave her the stamina to continue in that cutthroat business they call Hollywood. Let's all raise a glass, whatever you're doing at Horlicks, Jammy Dodger, you name it, to the celebrated talent of the one and only Gene Kelly. Oh, and by the way, which one do you prefer? Do you prefer Donald O'Connor, Gene Kelly, or Fred Astaire? I'd love to know. Who do you think was one of the greatest dancers of all time in film musicals? For me, I thought Judy Garland was a brilliant dancer. She did incredibly well. Everybody loved Ginger Rogers, but we all have our own favourites, don't we? Another lady celebrating her birthday on this day is none other than a very beautiful lady that used to pop out of a Jeannie. That's right, Barbara Eden, who starred in I Dream of Jeannie with the soon-to-be Dallas star Larry Hagman. Now this sort of TV series really took off because in that particular period in the 60s, we were all really into magic. If you think about Bewitched, that was another big hit on screen. And this particular show has remained a fan favourite for years. It's rerun somewhere over the world every single day. And it's hard not to see why when you look at the gorgeous Barbara, who still looks wonderful today. Now, what else happened though on this day? Back in 1966, the Lunar Orbital, oh yes, a bit of spacecraft for you, the Lunar Orbital 1 took the very first picture of Earth from the moon, circling the moon, I might point out. This was absolutely radical when you think, and really groundbreaking when you think about what was to come a few years later. Definitely so, and it's really fascinated people to this day, hasn't it? Is there life on Mars? Is there life anywhere else other than the planet that we're all living on now? And 1966 on this day was a pivotal year. 1965 was a brilliant year, oh yes indeed, but even more so for this particular movie, because it was on this day, 1965, that the wonderful Sound of Music was released. Christopher Plummer and the soon-to-be Dame Julie Andrews were the stars. When it first took off, a lot of studio bosses again thought it was too sugary sweet. It wasn't going to be the success that it was. There's really no deciding, is that what makes a movie become the choice, you know, like one of those family favourites like The Wizard of Oz that you want to see time and time again. But this was definitely one of those. It became one of the biggest box office hits ever in the world. Another birthday boy who created quite a lot of havoc in his short time here was none other than the Rolling Stone himself, Keith Moon. If you ever read his books and all that sort of stuff, wow, what a life he led. As I say, he wasn't around a long time, excellent drummer, and of course the Rolling Stones, you read the Rolling Stones or the Beatles, weren't you? But Keith Moon really did put the band on the map. Sadly, he left us in 1978, but it would have been his birthday today, being born in 1946. Now, is this something that we simply can't live without? No, I'm not talking Horlicks, Jammy Dodgers, sponge cake. By the way, it's sponge cake day today. Can you believe There's a day for everything, isn't there? As I said the other day, literally there is a day for everything. But way back in 1991, you would never have imagined how you would have not wanted to live without this. That's right, because Tim Berners-Lee, he opened the World Wide Web, which is now, as we know, the internet, and how that truly changed the world. A lot of skeptics at that time said it wouldn't take off, people wouldn't be interested, but of course they couldn't foresee exactly how much it would integrate into our lives. And when you also think about it, how we all use the internet, all the digital technology to survive this pandemic. You know, businesses have thrived and new businesses have been opened, but more importantly, the world has gone on. And it all started really way back in 1991. And what I found fascinating, I don't know about you, was the fact that you could just type something in and basically find out whether or not it was true. Do you still trust the internet? I'll leave that one with you. Way back in 1938, a beautiful lady got a brand new name. She was originally called, get this, Hedwig Keisler. But the boss of MGM Pictures, Louis B. Mayer, decided to rechristen her and make her his star. She became Hedy Lamarr. Now apparently, according to folklore, he decided to call her that because he was sort of giving a nod to a previous lady who'd been dubbed Too Beautiful, the world's most beautiful woman, Barbara Lamarr. Now, as I say, Hedy wasn't over keen, but once stardom came and she had hit movies, she grew to like the name Hedy Lamarr. What an absolute natural beauty she was, and as we told you before, was also pivotal in the making of things digital in this modern age. Do check her out, do check some documentaries online. You will be surprised exactly what happened. Now, a strange thing happened on this day in 1977 for no apparent reason. Were you a Barbie doll fan? Oh yes, because for some reason on this day, Barbie got some of their biggest sales ever. Now, I think you could say maybe it's the prediction of they were going to run out, or maybe there was a PR story on that day. And obviously a lot of people wanted Barbie dolls, didn't they, in time for Christmas. A friend of mine told me a fun story the other day, though. He said there's now a new one called the Divorced Barbie. And basically, it's a very expensive doll, right? It's about £450, but you do get to keep Ken's house, Ken's car, and some of Ken's wardrobe too. It's a cruel joke, but actually very in keeping, isn't it, with what happens in the world that we have today. And finally, on this day today, if you were a man into Space Odyssey or indeed life from Mars, we mentioned that earlier on, I know, but more importantly, you just loved a good rocker, well, this particular man, that's right, the reinvention man himself, David Bowie, was #1 with this classic, Ashes to Ashes. And that particular video was the world's most expensive video to date at that point. Over £30,000, it featured New Romantics, filmed on Hastings Beach with a bonfire, and included none other than Steve Strange, who would later, a couple of years later in fact, become a superstar himself, all thanks to the techie group Visage. Now, what I like about this particular track is it put David Bowie once again back on top into a brand new decade and ensured that he had fans for many years to come. One of his biggest fans was none other than Madonna, who said that she liked the fact that he reinvented himself with each new release. Now, I wonder where she got that idea from. You're up to date with all the latest news that happened on this day. And as ever, will I now see you tomorrow? Neil Shawn in the very heart of London.